The galactic hegemony had ruled the stars for 12,000 years. They controlled 1,000 worlds. They had ships that could destroy planets. They had weapons that could burn entire fleets in seconds. Every species in the galaxy knew their power. Every species feared them, and they believed humans were nothing. The hegemony kept Earth in a quarantine zone. They watched humanity the way a person watches insects in a jar. Humans were young. Humans were weak. Humans had no advanced technology. The Empire's records said human ships were slow and poorly built. Their weapons were primitive. They were not worth worrying about. This was a mistake. Deep in the heart of the hegemony, in a region called the Core, there was a space station named the Throne of Stars. This was the most important place in the entire empire. The Emperor himself lived there. The greatest leaders gathered there. 17 sensor networks watched every corner of space around it. 4 massive fleets guarded it at all times. A stellar fortress protected its borders. Nothing could enter the Core without permission. Nothing had breached its defenses in 8,000 years. On this day, High Overseer Veth stood in the grand hall of the Throne of Stars. He was tall, even for his species. His skin was pale blue, and his eyes were like black glass. He wore robes made of light itself. He was the supreme commander of all military forces in the Core. He answered only to the Emperor. Around him, diplomats from a dozen worlds talked and laughed. This was a summit. Leaders had come to discuss trade and treaties. Veth found it boring. He preferred war, but the Emperor wanted peace, so Veth stood there and pretended to care. Far below, in a dark room filled with screens and machines, a young technician named Rillick stared at his sensor display. Rillick was small and nervous. He had only worked this job for 2 years. His task was simple. He watched the screens. He reported anything strange. Usually, there was nothing to report, but today, something was wrong. Rillick saw a heat signature on his screen. It was faint, like a candle seen from far away. It appeared in a sector where nothing should exist. That sector was empty space. No ships, no stations, no asteroids, just void. He checked his equipment. Everything worked fine. He ran the scan again. The signature was still there. Rillick called his supervisor. A large officer named Broth walked over and looked at the screen with bored eyes. "What is it?" Broth asked. "There is something here," Rillick said. He pointed at the faint mark. A heat signature. "In Sector 9, Broth laughed. "Sector 9 is empty. Your machine is broken. I checked the machine. It works fine. Then it is cosmic background noise. A dying star. Radiation echo. It happens all the time." Brath turned to leave. "Sir," Rillick said, "it is moving." Brath stopped. He turned back slowly. "What did you say?" "The signature. It moved." "Look." Rillick pulled up a recording. The faint mark had shifted position over the last hour. Not much, but enough. Brath frowned. He leaned closer to the screen. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, he shook his head. "It is nothing, a sensor ghost. Delete the record and reset your system." Rillick wanted to argue, but Brath was his superior. So he stayed quiet and watched as Brath walked away. He did not delete the record. 3 hours later, Rillick looked at his screen again. His blood turned cold. The signature had returned, and it was closer, much closer. He ran the calculations. Whatever this thing was, it had traveled a distance that should have taken days. It had done it in hours, and it was still moving toward the Core. Rillick sent an emergency alert to the security office. An officer came to his station, then another officer, then 5 more. They all looked at the screen. They all ran their own calculations. They all came to the same conclusion. Something was inside the perimeter. The news reached High Overseer Veth during the summit dinner. A security officer whispered in his ear. Veth's face went pale. He excused himself and walked quickly to the command center. Admiral Korath was already there. Korath was old for his species. His scales were gray, and his eyes were tired. But his mind was sharp. He had spent 50 years studying military threats. 20 years ago, he had written a report about humanity. He had warned that humans were more dangerous than they appeared. The War Council had laughed at him. Nobody was laughing now. "Show me," Korath said to the technicians. They put the signature on the main screen. It was still faint, still hard to see, but it was definitely there, and it was definitely moving. "What is it?" Veth demanded. A technician ran an analysis. The results came back in seconds. The room went silent. "It matches the energy signature of a human warship," the technician said. His voice was shaking. "A Terran vessel. Classification: unknown." Veth stared at the screen. His mind could not accept what he was seeing. "That is impossible. Humans cannot reach the core. Their ships are too slow. Our sensors would have detected them." "Our sensors did not detect them," Korath said quietly. "Not until they were already inside." "How close?" Veth asked. Korath looked at the data. His face was grim. "Close enough to see the throne of stars with their own eyes." The room erupted. Officers shouted. Alarms began to sound. Emergency protocols activated across the station. And somewhere in the void, hidden in the darkness between stars, Captain Tae Woo stood on the bridge of the TSS Ironwake and smiled. Phase 1 was complete. The TSS Ironwake was not a beautiful ship. It was old. It was ugly. Its hull was covered in patches and repairs. The Hegemony's database listed it as destroyed 7 years ago. The database was wrong. Captain Tae Woo stood in the center of the bridge. He was a man of medium height with calm eyes and steady hands. He never raised his voice. He never showed fear. His crew had followed him through impossible missions before. They trusted him. Completely. "Status report," he said. Lieutenant Hana Sok looked up from her navigation console. She was young, but her eyes were old. She had spent 2 years studying the Hegemony's sensor grid. She knew every gap, every blind spot, every weakness. She had guided the Iron Wake through defenses that should have been impossible to breach. "We are holding position in the shadow of asteroid cluster 77 Alpha," she said. "The Hegemony has not detected us yet, but they are getting nervous. I am seeing increased sensor sweeps in our direction." Captain Tae nodded. He had expected this. They had come too close. Sooner or later, someone would see them. Chief Engineer Dae Chul climbed up from the lower deck. He was covered in grease, and his hands were burned from hot machinery. He was the oldest member of the crew. His hair was gray, and his back was bent. But he could make the Iron Wake do things no engineer thought possible. "Captain," Dae said, "we have a problem. The stealth coating is breaking down. The heat from our engines is eating through it. I can slow the damage, but I cannot stop it." "How long do we have?" 6 hours. Maybe 7. After that, we light up every sensor in this system, like a star going supernova. Captain Tae looked at Lieutenant Hana. "Can we complete the mission in 6 hours?" Hana checked her calculations. "It will be close. But yes, if everything goes according to plan." "When does anything go according to plan?" Dae muttered. A soft laugh came from the communications station. Ensign Yuna Bong was the youngest crew member. She was barely 22 years old. Her job was to listen. She monitored Hegemony communications. She decoded their signals. She learned their secrets. "Captain," Yuna said, "you need to hear this." She put the intercepted transmission on the speakers. The bridge, filled with alien voices. They were speaking fast. They sounded scared. "Emergency alert to all core defense units. Unknown contact detected inside perimeter. Classification: possible Terran vessel. All ships move to intercept positions. This is not a drill." The crew looked at each other. They had been found. "Well," Captain Tae said calmly. "Already done, Captain. On the throne of stars, chaos reigned. High Overseer Veth stood in the command center and screamed at his officers. His pale blue face had turned dark with rage. His black eyes burned with fury. "How did this happen?" he demanded. "We have 17 sensor networks, 4 defense fleets, a stellar fortress. How did a primitive human ship get past all of that?" Nobody answered. Nobody knew. Admiral Korath stood apart from the shouting. He watched the tactical display. The human ship had appeared as a small red dot on the screen. It was so close to the core that it seemed like a mistake. Surely no enemy could come this far without being seen. But the humans had done it. Korath remembered his old report. He had studied human history. He had learned about their wars. Humans were not the strongest species. They were not the smartest. They did not have the best technology. But they had something else. They had patience. They had creativity. They were willing to do things that other species considered impossible or foolish. The hegemony had always won through superior power. They built bigger ships. They made stronger weapons. They crushed their enemies with overwhelming force. Humans did not fight that way. A young officer approached Korath. "Admiral, we have analyzed the human ship's approach path. It makes no sense. With 2 have sound, Admiral sound. Show me." The officer pulled up a map. A dotted line showed the route the Iron Wake had taken. It went through asteroid fields. It passed through radiation zones. It squeezed between sensor networks so tightly that there was almost no room for error. "This path should be impossible," the officer said. "No ship should be able to fly it. The margins are too small. One mistake, and they would have been detected or destroyed." Korath studied the map. He felt a cold feeling in his stomach. "They did not make any mistakes," he said quietly. "Sir, the humans. They flew this impossible path perfectly. Not one error, not one wrong move." Korath turned to face the officer. "Do you understand what that means? They did not get lucky. They did not stumble through our defenses by accident. They planned this. They studied us. They found our weaknesses. And they used them." Then, the officer's face went pale. "But how? Our sensor grid is classified at the highest level. No outside species should know its layout." Korath shook his head. "We have been watching humanity for decades. We never considered that they might be watching us back." Across the command center, Veth was still shouting. He ordered the defense fleets to converge on the human ship's position. He demanded that every weapon be armed. He wanted the Iron Wake destroyed immediately. Korath walked to him. "High Overseer, I advise caution." "Korath, I advise caution." Veth turned on him with fury. "Caution? There is an enemy ship in our most sacred space. I will not show caution. We do not know why they are here," Korath said. "If they wanted to attack, they could have fired already. They are close enough to hit the station. Then why are they here?" Korath looked at the red dot on the screen. It had not moved. It was just sitting there, waiting. "I do not know," he admitted. "But I think we are about to find out." On the Iron Wake, Captain Tae-Woo gave the order. "Yuna, open a channel. It is time to deliver our message." The message came through every speaker on the throne of stars. It interrupted the emergency alerts. It cut through the military channels. It even played in the Grand Hall, where the diplomats were hiding. A human voice, calm, clear, speaking in perfect Imperial Common. "This is Captain Tae-Woo of the Terran ship Iron Wake. I am addressing High Overseer Veth and the leadership of the Galactic Hegemony. Please listen carefully. We do not have much time." In the command center, every officer froze. Veth stared at the speakers with his mouth open. Korath leaned forward, listening with intense focus. 12 years ago, your empire placed Earth in a quarantine zone. You called us primitive. You called us weak. You said we were not worth your attention. You told the galaxy that humanity was contained, that we were no threat to anyone. Captain Tay paused. When he spoke again, his voice was harder. You were wrong. On the bridge of the Iron Wake, Tay stood with his hands behind his back. His crew watched him with quiet pride. They had come so far. They had risked everything. Now the galaxy would hear their words. Right now, my ship is sitting inside your core perimeter. We passed through 17 sensor networks. We avoided 4 defense fleets. We flew past your stellar fortress without being seen. 1 old warship, 4 crew members. And we reached the most protected place in your empire. He let that sink in. We are not here to attack. We are not here to start a war. We are here to deliver a message. Your defenses have holes. Your sensors have blind spots. Your fortress can be reached. And if 1 ship can do this, imagine what comes next. The transmission ended. Silence filled the command center. Then everyone started talking at once. Track that signal. Where did it come from? Find that ship. How did they get our encryption codes? Veth slammed his fist on a console. The sound echoed through the room. Everyone went quiet. I want that ship destroyed, Veth said. His voice was low and dangerous. I want its crew captured. I want them brought to me alive so I can execute them myself. Send every ship we have. Find them. Now. Officers ran to carry out his orders. Alarms screamed throughout the station. Defense fleets began to move. Admiral Korath did not move. He stood still, thinking. The human captain had made a mistake. By sending that message, he had revealed his general position. The hegemony's ships would converge on that location within minutes. There was no way the Iron Wake could escape, unless that was what the humans wanted. Korath pulled up the tactical display. He studied the positions of the defense fleets. He looked at the path they would take to reach the human ship, and then he saw it. Stop, he said suddenly. Stop the fleet movements. Veth turned to him with rage in his eyes. What? The humans are not trying to escape. They are leading us somewhere. Look at the paths our ships are taking. They are leaving gaps in our defensive formation. The humans want us to chase them. Veth did not care. Then, we chase them. We have 100 ships to their 1. It does not matter what they want. We will crush them. High Overseer, please listen. The humans did not come here to win a battle. They came here to prove something. Every minute we spend chasing them, every ship we move out of position, proves their point. They are showing the galaxy that they can make us dance. Veth's face twisted with hatred. I will not let vermin dictate my actions. The orders went out. Ships began to move. On the Iron Wake, Hana watched her screens. They took the bait. 4 battle groups are converging on our position. They will arrive in 18 minutes. Plenty of time, Tay said. Begin the micro-jumps. The Iron Wake's engines hummed. The ship vanished from one position and appeared in another, deep inside an asteroid field. It was a short jump, barely worth the energy, but it put thousands of rocks between them and the approaching fleet. The hegemony ships were large, they were powerful, but they were not designed for asteroid fields. They had to slow down. They had to navigate carefully. The Iron Wake did not. Day had spent years modifying the ship. It was small and agile. It could squeeze through gaps that would destroy larger vessels. It could change direction faster than the hegemony's targeting systems could track. Yuna intercepted more communications. Captain, they are very angry. Also very confused. They do not understand how we keep disappearing. Let them stay confused, Tay said. Hana, next jump. The Iron Wake vanished again. For the next 2 hours, the humans led the hegemony on a chase through the core. They appeared near a sensor station and disabled it with a precise missile strike. They vanished before the counterattack arrived. They showed up near a supply depot and broadcast another message, taunting the hegemony commanders. They disappeared again. Each time, The humans escaped without taking damage. Each time, the hegemony looked more foolish. Reports spread through the core. A human ship was running circles around the greatest military force in the galaxy. Officers who had spent their careers believing in hegemony superiority watched in shock as a single enemy vessel made them look like fools. On the throne of stars, diplomats from a dozen worlds watched the chaos unfold. They had come here believing the hegemony was invincible. Now they saw the truth. The Empire was not as strong as it pretended to be, and somewhere out there, humans had proven it. High Overseer Veth stood in the command center, watching his fleets fail again and again. His hands shook with rage. His reputation was being destroyed with every passing minute. "Find them," he whispered. "Find them and kill them all." On the Iron Wake, Tay looked at the damage reports. The ship was holding together, but barely. Day was working miracles. But even miracles had limits. "Captain," Hana said, "I have calculated our final approach. We can reach the throne of stars in one more jump." Tay looked at his crew. They were tired. They were scared. But they were ready. "Then let us finish what we started." The Emperor spoke for the first time in 50 years. His voice came through a secure channel, heard only by High Overseer Veth and Admiral Korath. It was ancient and cold. Like wind blowing through dead stars. "Destroy the human ship. Capture the crew. I want them alive for public execution. The galaxy must see what happens to those who challenge the hegemony." The transmission ended. Veth smiled. Finally, he had permission to do whatever was necessary. He turned to his officers with new energy. "All ships in the core are now under my direct command. Form a hunting grid. Cover every escape route. The humans cannot hide forever. Find them and bring them to me." Over 200 warships began to move. They spread out across the core like a net closing around a fish. Sensor stations increased their power. Patrol routes were changed. Every asteroid field was scanned. Every shadow was searched. On the Iron Wake, alarms flashed red. "Captain," Hana said urgently, "they are closing in. I count over 200 ships forming a grid around us. They are covering all the escape routes I had planned." Tay studied the tactical display. The enemy positions looked like a cage. Every gap was being filled. Every blind spot was being watched. How long before they find us? At this rate, less than 2 hours. Day climbed up from the engine room. His face was dark with exhaustion. "Captain, I have more bad news. The stealth coating is almost gone. We have maybe 30 minutes before we start showing up on their basic sensors." Yuna looked up from her console. "And I am intercepting orders for our execution. They want to broadcast it to the entire galaxy. They are already building the stage." The crew fell silent. They had always known this mission might be their last. But hearing it spoken out loud made it real. Tay took a deep breath. He looked at each of them. Hana, who had guided them through impossible paths. Day, who had kept their broken ship flying. Yuna, who had given them the enemy's secrets. They had followed him into the heart of the most powerful empire in existence. He would not let them die here. "We are not running anymore," he said. "If they want to catch us, let them try. But we are going to make them pay for every meter they chase us." Hana's eyes widened. "Captain, are you suggesting we fight?" "I am suggesting we make them remember this day forever." He pointed at the display. "They have 200 ships. We have 4 people and 1 old warship. By every calculation, we should already be dead. But we are not. Do you know why?" Nobody answered. "Because they fight by the rules. They follow patterns. They expect their enemies to do the same. But we do not follow rules. We do not match patterns. We do things they believe are impossible, and that terrifies them." He turned to Hana. "Plot a course through the center of their formation. Find me the 2 largest ships in their fleet." "Captain, that is suicide." "No. That is exactly what they would never expect." Hana hesitated. Then she began working on her console. A new path appeared on the display. It went straight through the enemy fleet. It passed between two massive battleships. It was insane. "There," she said. "The ships are the Wrath of Stars and the Divine Hammer. Both are command vessels. Both are crewed by over 3,000 officers each. Perfect. Day, how much power can you give the engines?" Day scratched his head. "If I remove all safety limits and pray to every god I know, maybe 120%, for about 5 minutes. After that, the engines explode. That will be enough." "Yuna, can you broadcast on the hegemony command frequency?" "I can try. Their encryption is strong, but I have been breaking their codes all day." "Good. Here is what we are going to do." 10 minutes later, the Iron Wake shot out of the asteroid field at impossible speed. Every sensor in the core detected them instantly. Alarms screamed across 200 ships. Officers shouted orders. Weapons charged. Targeting systems locked on. The Iron Wake was heading straight for the center of the fleet. On the Wrath of Stars, Admiral Korath watched in disbelief. "What are they doing? This is suicide." On the Divine Hammer, the captain ordered all weapons to fire. But the Iron Wake was moving too fast. The targeting systems could not keep up. Shots flew past the human ship, missing by meters. Then Yuna's voice came through the command frequency. "Attention, hegemony vessels. This is the TSS Iron Wake. Your ships, the Wrath of Stars and the Divine Hammer, are on a collision course. If you do not change direction immediately, you will destroy each other. Have a nice day." It was a lie. The two ships were not on a collision course, but Yuna had spoofed the navigation signals of both vessels. Their computers believed they were about to crash. Automatic collision alarms activated on both ships. Emergency protocols took over. Both vessels fired their maneuvering thrusters at maximum power, trying to avoid an impact that would never happen. The Wrath of Stars turned hard to port. The Divine Hammer turned hard to starboard. They both fired their weapons at the same moment, at each other. The Divine Hammer's shields absorbed most of the damage, but several shots hit critical systems. Fires broke out on 3 decks. The Wrath of Stars lost its primary sensor array. Both ships broke formation in chaos. The Iron Wake flew through the gap between them. Korath watched the human ship vanish into the distance. His mouth hung open. He could not believe what he had just seen. The humans had tricked 2 of the most powerful ships in the fleet into attacking each other. "Admiral," an officer said weakly, "should we pursue?" Korath did not answer. He was beginning to understand something terrible. The humans were not trying to escape. They were not trying to survive. They were trying to make a point. And every minute of this chase, every shot fired, every mistake made, proved that point more clearly. The greatest military force in the galaxy could not catch one human ship. On the Iron Wake, the crew cheered. "How far to the Throne of Stars?" he asked. Hana checked her display. 12 minutes at current speed. "Then we have 12 minutes to finish this mission." He looked at his crew. The Throne of Stars grew larger on the view screen. It was massive. A station the size of a small moon, covered in gold and crystal and weapons. The Emperor's home. The heart of the hegemony. The most protected place in the known galaxy. And the Iron Wake was flying straight toward it. Alarms screamed across the station. Defense batteries charged. Shield generators powered up. Every weapon system activated at once. The station's commanders could not believe what they were seeing. A human ship, battered and burned, was approaching the Emperor's residence. "They would not dare," someone whispered. But the humans were daring. On the bridge of the Iron Wake, Tay watched the station grow closer. His ship was falling apart around him. Smoke filled the corridors. Sparks flew from damaged consoles. Day was somewhere below, holding the engines together with his bare hands and desperate prayers. "Hana," Tay said, "how close can we get? If we push the engines, we can reach visual range, close enough that they can see us through their windows." "Do it." The iron wake accelerated. The station's weapons opened fire. Massive energy beams cut through space. Missiles launched in waves. The firepower aimed at the small human ship could have destroyed a small fleet. But Hana was ready. She had spent 2 years studying this station. She knew every weapon's firing arc. She knew every blind spot. She flew the iron wake through the storm of destruction, like a dancer moving between raindrops. Shots passed so close that the crew could feel the heat. A missile exploded meters from the hull. The ship shook and groaned. But it kept flying. In the command center of the Throne of Stars, High Overseer Veth screamed orders that no one could follow. Admiral Korath stood silent, watching the impossible happen. The human ship was going to reach the station. "All weapons, concentrate fire," Veth shouted. "Destroy them." "We are trying," an officer replied desperately. "They are too fast. They are too small. Our systems cannot track them." The iron wake burst through the final defense line. It flew past the outer platforms. It circled the central tower where the Emperor himself watched from his throne room. The ship came so close that the people inside the station could see its hull with their naked eyes. And then Yuna activated the broadcast. "People of the galactic hegemony. People of all worlds watching this transmission. Look at your screens. A human warship sits at the doorstep of your Emperor. We came here through your defenses. We came here past your fleets. We came here despite everything you threw at us. And now, we leave on our own terms." The iron wake hung in space for 10 seconds. Every camera on the station recorded it. Every news network in the core captured the image. A battered human ship, smoking and damaged, floating victoriously before the most powerful station in the galaxy. Then the slipstream drive activated. The iron wake vanished. High Overseer Veth stared at the empty space where the ship had been. His face was pale. His hands trembled. He had failed. In front of the Emperor. In front of the entire galaxy. Admiral Korath knew what this meant. He had tried to warn them. He had written reports. He had begged the War Council to take humanity seriously. No one had listened. Now everyone would pay the price. The aftermath came quickly. The hegemony tried to suppress the news. They claimed the iron wake had been destroyed. They said the broadcasts were fake. They insisted that no human ship could have possibly reached the core. But Yuna had prepared for this. During the mission, she had uploaded every piece of data to a dozen independent news networks across neutral space. Sensor logs, communication recordings, video of the iron wake flying past the Throne of Stars. Everything was documented. Everything was verified. Within days, the truth spread across the galaxy. A single human warship had done the impossible. They had penetrated the heart of the greatest empire in existence. They had delivered their message directly to the Emperor, and they had escaped without being destroyed. The hegemony's reputation shattered. High Overseer Veth was quietly removed from his position. Official records said he retired for health reasons. Everyone knew the truth. Admiral Korath was promoted to take his place. His first order was to create a new department focused entirely on studying humanity. But it was too late. Other species began reaching out to Earth. The Venn Collective sent trade proposals. The Free Worlds Alliance asked for military advisors. The Merchant Guild of Orion offered partnership agreements. Species that had spent centuries living in fear of the hegemony suddenly saw an alternative. The humans had shown them that the Empire could be challenged. On Earth, Captain Tae-Woo and his crew received a quiet welcome. There were no parades, no celebrations. Their mission was still classified. But the people who mattered knew what they had done. The Iron Wake was retired to a museum. The ship that had done the impossible would never fly again. But its legend would live forever. Tae stood before the ship one last time. Hana, Dae, and Yuna stood beside him. "What happens now?" Yuna asked. Tae looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, the hegemony was watching. They were afraid now. They knew that humanity was not weak. They knew that Earth could not be ignored. Now, Tay said, the real work begins. In the years that followed, humanity's influence grew. They built new ships. They made new allies. They showed the galaxy that strength was not just about weapons and power. It was about courage. It was about creativity. It was about refusing to accept limits that others placed on you. The hegemony never forgot the day the Iron Wake came to their doorstep. Every night, their leaders looked at the stars and wondered, if one ship could do this, what would come next? They never found out. Because by the time they were ready to fight, humanity had already won. Not through war, not through conquest, but by proving that the impossible was always possible. And that was something no empire could ever defeat.